Alfred was on the early train of the systemic therapist line. Remember, Erickson kind of talked a little bit about that. He said that in order to understand a person, we need to understand the system that they were within. We need to understand the environment that surrounded them. We need to look at the person in context of the people that are around them, the living situation that's around them, the resources that are around them, or the lack of resources that are around them. So it's not just a person. We need to look at the whole big picture, which is interesting too, because it also coincides with his concept of the whole, and where that goes. He was the first to really start coming up with an expression that a lot of therapists will use from this point forward, and that's the phenomenological perspective. And I always pronounce this wrong. It's phenomenological. And what that means is you look at things from the client's perspective, from their own unique individual view of life. You pay attention to their feelings, their emotions, their unique experiences to life. And by understanding that, we'll be able to better understand the individual themselves. We can have two individuals who grow up in a similar setting, maybe even the same household perhaps, but they might have two very different perspectives on life. So it's important to look at the individual in terms of who they are in their own uniqueness. No case study is the same. This might seem obvious now, but back in 1900, it wasn't so obvious. If you had these symptoms, you were this. If this happened, then this would happen, kind of thing. So we're just starting to kind of break out of that mold. Everyone doesn't kind of fit into a nice little box. So he was kind of more or less highlighting that we need to kind of look at the individual. We need to look at what he refers to as their subjective reality, their feelings, their values, their beliefs. And his term for this was individual psychology. I guess it was a way to kind of address the individual versus addressing the entire populace that might have similar issues or symptoms. Part of this individual psychology is unifying ourselves, identifying what our goals are, our unique goals, and striving towards them. We are looking at things from a holistic concept and not just the parts. So we do look at the biological aspects of life, but we also look at the social and the environmental things that come into influence. And remember, he said that our behavior is purposeful and goal-oriented, which replaced the deterministic view of Freud. Once again, Adler was more interested in the future than the past, where Freud said we were constantly trying to kind of make up for things that happened in the past with all that unfinished business. Adler would say that, hey, no, we're not driven by that. We're driven by what we want to do tomorrow. We're driven by what we want to do 5 years from now, and that's what motivates us more. We look for themes within people's decision-making, whether or not they are focused on the past or whether or not they are focused on the present. But what we do as an Adlerian perspective is we try to get them to think about the future. A lot of times you'll notice sometimes people who have issues are constantly retelling stories of the past without oftentimes talking about what lies ahead. Oh, boo-hoo, I broke up with my girlfriend and I'm going to talk about her over and over and over and over again, without actually kind of addressing the future and addressing perhaps the same goals. Maybe you wanted to have marriage as part of your reason for dating this person. And that could still be the case. It's just that maybe it's going to be marriage with a different person rather than the original one. We are striving towards something called fictional finalism. This is kind of our idealized self, our idealized life. The things that we kind of thought about when we were 6 years old, as your complete whole. Oftentimes, we're never fully going to get there. We're not going to have this perfect little life. I'm not going to be able to slam dunk a basketball. I've kind of come to terms with that. But at the same time, we are still striving for that. We still want those things, and we might try to invest our behaviors and our emotions into those things. We are striving towards superiority in that aspect. He was famous as saying, Only once I am perfect will I be happy. I want to remind you that his idea of inferiority is not a negative force. It is used to motivate us, to take us from lower to higher, from weaker to stronger. In many ways, that was just like Adler's life. He was overcoming sickness and illness, and also constantly trying to strive to outdo his brothers and siblings and things of such. He was the first theorist to really coin the term lifestyle. And what lifestyle was to him was a plan of life, and also a perception of self and others and the world around you. And he said that we create a style, a lifestyle, to achieve our goals. And he said that we are constantly actors in this world, and we base our actions on what we're trying to get. So if I'm trying to get a girlfriend, I would be the actor of a romantic gentleman in order to get what I want. And he said we are constantly doing this flip-flopping of roles in terms of what we need to accomplish in life. I'm a very different person when I'm on the soccer pitch, where I'm very aggressive and trying to be a superior player. So we're constantly flip-flopping within our roles in order to accomplish what we want. And this is another example of people being proactive versus reactive. We choose to change. We choose to turn on the charm in this particular case, and it's not necessarily reactive. He talked a lot about social interests and the importance of society. Again, remember, this is all new at the time, so it is kind of revolutionary. He was interested in a person's capacity to cooperate and contribute to the social world, that people were in contact with the present community, the present and what's around them, and also interested in helping the future community. Someone that's concerned about the welfare of others and concerned in general about the betterment of humanity. He says that as social interests increase, inferiority drops. That one real important part of life is to be socially involved, and that we are motivated by a desire to belong and to be involved with more individuals and with a community, with society, that we are social creatures. And that community helps you feel good and healthy. And oftentimes you'll hear about reports about the elderly, and how the ones that are active and the ones that are involved in different clubs or programs and things like that live longer. I don't think that's any coincidence, that because they're involved, because they're taking part in society, because they have a purpose within society, that fosters a sense of health. I remember reading a book by Bertrand Russell. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with it. It's called The Conquest of Happiness. And he oftentimes referenced the fact that if you're depressed in your life, that you're thinking about yourself. And that if you want to become undepressed, for lack of a better word, that you should start thinking of others. Right now, as I have this lecture to you, there are thousands of people out there that are suffering. And that is something that is oftentimes ignored when we're focusing on our own suffering. And I'm sure whatever we're suffering from, someone has it worse out there. So once again, I'll just quote him, if you're thinking about yourself, then chances are, or if you're depressed, chances are you're thinking about yourself, and you should try focusing on other individuals. Back to Adler, he said that we have three main goals within our lives, that we are interested in building friendships, establishing intimacy, and contributing to society. He said that these were the fundamentals of living, and that if we were unable to accomplish all three of these things, that it would lead to some sort of psychological problem, some sort of pathology, some sort of issue within our lives. We need to fulfill our need to build friendships, meaningful relationships. We need to establish intimacy, become close with someone, perhaps love somebody, and be able to contribute to society, have a place within society. If we don't do those three things, we'll be ill on some level, that we won't be fulfilled, that we won't be whole. and that these kind of general goals motivate us.